Education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, that the child of a farm worker can become the president of a great nation. Education is the great equalizer. So many of our people rose beyond farmlands and cow pastures owing to education. Bigat and Davies pushed for our first secondary school in 1925. Since then, we have accumulated 56 early childhood care education centers, or preschools as we call them, 42 primary schools, 9 secondary schools, and 5 institutions so offering tertiary education. But where are we today in our provision of education? Are we where we want to be, where we need to be? And so this evening, I want to start with roll call. It's the first thing we do in school, in class. So let's see who we have in class this evening. We have Liana Alexander. Present? Liana Alexander works in ECCE, special ed, and also in inclusive education. Then we have Kwasi Baptiste.
Present, sir.
Mr. Baptiste teaches at Scarborough Secondary School and teaches in vocational education field. Then we have Anisha Caruth Walcott. Yes.
Present, sir.
Yes, I can't forget the Walcott. Thanks to the correction. And Mrs. Walcott works with the National Training Agency, NTA. Then we have Kershawn Cornwall. Kershawn Cornwall is a former language teacher, Spanish teacher, but he's now a curriculum officer with the Division of Education. We have then Giselle Donaldson Yates.
Present, sir.
And Mrs. Donaldson Yates is actually a Standard 3 teacher. In fact, this is her classroom that I have sequestered for tonight here at Scarborough Methodist School. So thank you very much, Miss, for the use of your classroom. Then we have Susan Grant.
Yes, sir.
Susan Grant works in student support at the Division of Education. So she ensures that all of our children are taken care of, the mental health issues, the social issues. Mrs. Grant helps us with that.
Yes.
Beautiful. Then we're supposed to have Priska Jack. Is Priska Jack here? Absent. Alright, she's not here as yet, so maybe she's late. Miss Jack comes from Lansome, so maybe she's late. Then we have Natasha Second.
Present, sir.
And Miss Second is the advisor to the Division of Education and former acting vice principal of Bishop's High School. Then we have Shirla Waldron Joseph.
Present, sir.
Mrs. Waldron Joseph is the current principal of Bethesda Government Primary School. And finally, we have Nicole Williams Wilson.
Present, sir.
And Mrs. Williams Wilson is science teacher, science department at Scarborough Secondary School. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Tobago. Thank you all for joining us again for another creative consultation on the budget. Make it make sense. We say in Tobago that common sense met before book sense. And we are hoping to apply some common sense to our education system and our provision of education. We have quite a lot to talk about. And in the room this evening, the classroom this evening, we have several gifts in one space. We have individuals in early childhood education. We have individuals in special needs education. We have individuals teaching at preschool, primary, secondary, tertiary. We have curriculum officers. We have advisors. We have people at all ends of the spectrum. And the question for us this evening that we have to answer ultimately is, where do we want to take education in Tobago? So that, one, we will provide the best opportunities for our young people. Secondly, that we can provide education for export, which is just fancy terms of saying we're providing such high quality education that people want to come into this space and pay us for our educational offerings. And ultimately, we need to discuss what sort of investments we should be making in education. How much more money should we be spending in education? Are we spending too much or too little? Some argue that we spend in Tobago more money per child than anywhere else in the country. Some will also go further and argue that in Tobago, we have more places per child, better quality school plans per child or for every child than anywhere else in the country. The question then is are our results showing that kind of investment? And what do we need to do to move the investment closer to the deliverable of high quality education on the island? And so we're going to have very casual conversation. And of course, you are free to comment, to put your questions on the live. We will be following these questions and these comments. We are live on all our social media handles, starting with the Office of the Chief Secretary page, the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy. We are also live on Tobago Updates. We are live on Tobago Channel 5 as well. And so let's get going. Teachers, educators, in fact, everyone here is an educator by virtue of the role that you play. Education in Tobago, 41 years of the THA, first secondary school since 1925. So we're not that young in the business anymore. Almost 100 years of secondary education on the island. And of course, we have had primary education for a number of years too, owing to the support of our religious organizations on the island. Given that the majority of our primary institutions are religiously held institutions. Where are we today? Are we satisfied? Let's start there. Are we satisfied with where we are in terms of education delivery? I think you need to start, Ms. Second. As the advisor in the division, are we satisfied with the delivery of education on the island?
No, we are not. First, we need to know what it is we want. The division itself has the task of managing the system of education. And we have to be more strategic in our thinking, in our planning, financial planning strategically, managing change, becoming more flexible and understanding exactly what we want out of the system. If we are willing to embrace what we truly can be and the kinds of resources that we actually do have and we're not making maximum use of, then we have to be ready to make the changes. Operations have to be examined at the school level, at the division, all of our affiliated institutions, TITL, THDI, etc. How we give scholarships, how we fund our potential professionals for the future. Is it driven by evidence? Is it driven by research? Is it driven towards development, all-round development? We have to be strategic in our thinking. We have to be ready to make radical changes, and those radical changes have to be based on systematic and strategic planning and thought.
Well, that's quite a mouthful, but a very good mouthful in terms of a start and where we are in terms of satisfaction. But you are at an administrative level now, and you have been there for a little while, given that your previous position was that of vice principal. I want to hear from a teacher in this space. Secondary, Mr. Batiste, you are at Scarborough Secondary, vocational education, so not your traditional math, English, science. Are you satisfied with where we are in terms of our education exploits on the island?
Well, my short answer is no. And I have to concur with what Ms. Second has said. She mentioned that you have to know what you want, first and foremost. And that is something that has to be determined at a planning level. I think there's a disconnect with vocation on the island and education. I would have seen that there are a number of students who excel in various studies at the secondary level. after leaving secondary level, I'm not seeing that connect with the success they had at school and the ambitions that they would have had and hoped for. I'm not seeing that realized in their life thereafter school. So I think that there's a disconnect, and that has to be examined properly, because you're hearing that the private sector, the employers are not happy with the products of the school system, right? Sometimes the service is not a standard that they accept and they want. So there has to be some analysis, and we have to determine, or I may say you have to determine, what exactly do you want coming out of the schools?
And thank you for that. And some on the live were indicating they weren't hearing you properly. So I'll just repeat, but it may be the mass muffling the song.
Sure. No.
But Mr. Baptiste was raising the point of one, knowing what we want. That's the starting point. What do we want to achieve? Secondly, he raised a very valid point about the disconnect between the successes that happen in the school system and what happens thereafter. Simple questions we can ask. Where are our scholarship winners today? What are they doing? Where are our bright sparks? Those with the dozen CSEC passes in ones and so on. Where are they today? What are they doing? Are they contributing to this society or the global society in a meaningful way? What becomes of them? Are they in this space? And when we start talking about what's the follow-on post-formal education on the island, part of that conversation will include invariably outward migration, which is a significant draw on our educated pool of people. Allow me to move from secondary to primary school, and we have a primary school principal in Mrs. Waljon Joseph at Bethesda Government. So you're in the primary school level. I have not been to primary school in a long time, very long time, but I assume that some have changed and some things have not changed. Are we there yet when it comes to primary school education and producing the best? Every single year we have, and it will come up soon, we have the argument about who comes first in C. I've seen us change results overnight. I've seen the person who think they win end up not winning, and court case and lawyer case and all kind of thing over who come first in C. But certainly, primary education has to be beyond SCA examination, beyond who come first or last. Are we there yet when it comes to primary education on the island?
And I must say no. And I like the theme, make it make sense. And we need to change the conversation. We need to make education make sense. Because from our training, we know that children come with multiple intelligences, multifaceted in every way. But what do? We use one standardized test to assess these children. And we expect that when we use this standardized test, we will get varied results. Sad to say, we have been doing the wrong thing over and over and over again, and it probably seems right. But we need to look at how we teach and how we assess. Children come with multiple intelligences, and because they come with that kind of multiple intelligences, they should be assessed using multiple strategies. And I think that is one of the areas we are falling short. C determines a child's life at that particular time, when it should not.
Well, it determines a child's life thereafter. I mean, it's a little better than common entrance, because in common entrance, it was more or less a pass or fail, and we didn't have universal secondary education. And so for some children, they became failed adults because common entrance ruled them out. But we also have a situation now where SCA is still ruling out some of our young people.
That's right.
Because based on your grades there, your assessment there, it determines, one, the secondary school you attend, and there's a whole rat race towards rushing to certain schools on the island while rushing away from others. It determines the quality of education, how teachers view you, because you're now going into secondary school with a record with scores, and sometimes the school system prejudges you, and so many things hinges upon just a single exam. And the question is whether or not we're ready to overturn the apple cart when it comes to the assessment of our young people. Because I could tell you, while we argue that in this room and we have good theoretic, good practical, good expert grounds to argue that, there are many out there saying, I like it just so.
Yeah.
I want my child to pass for a prestige school. Why you must zone my child? Why you had to let my child have to compete with children who could draw and paint and could kick a ball? My child bright, you know, and they don't see beyond just what we deem as brightness, in quotation. But allow me to go even beneath that and go to early childhood care and education. And we have Mrs. Alexander here this evening. ECCE is a long time I've been to preschool, but when I was in kindergarten, I just enjoyed life and enjoyed school and enjoyed learning by playing.
Yeah.
But preschools have evolved beyond playing with putty during the day now. What's happening at ECCEs?
Okay, so tonight I am basically representing two areas which would be inclusive and special education and also the ECC sector. So at the ECC level, where we have, we now have our government schools as we say, and we also have the privates, which is parallel to what is known. However, at that level, one of the areas that we need to look at is training in terms of, and when I say training, it will be training at all levels. Because you have persons who are now equipped to work with the early childhood level, and we are saying, I would say current trends in education. And are we there yet in terms of what is current in terms of education? So at the early childhood level, we normally will have persons focusing on, maybe letter sounds and so many things that what you should be focusing on is that readiness skill, that foundation to be able to move to where we should be. And I mean, over the years, we would have had issues where Tobago would have been performing at a level, and when it was traced back, you were able to see that it was at the early childhood level that that foundation wasn't as solid as it should have been. So in terms of training, most persons, yes, you are at the early childhood level, but are we prepared as educators? Are we ready to move away from what we know as norm to go to what should be? Because when you look at the students who are coming to us, in terms of the technology that they are now exposed to, because when we look at 21st century teaching, it's not like reinventing the wheel, but taking the information or the methods that we know in terms of teaching and infusing technology and other areas. And that is what we need to do at the early childhood level currently. Moving on, we are looking at the holistic development of the child. So it's not just the academic aspect, but you're looking at the whole child. And when you're looking at the whole child, it means that you are actually looking at the different skill sets that you want them to have to be able to go into the primary school, right? Because we say seamless education and whatever. Added to that, early intervention. So I'm kind of like, going into inclusion. So at the early childhood level, that is where you can have early intervention. And I know that programs have been started in Trinidad where you have that early intervention programs happening. But early intervention would obviously be from birth to at least 3 years old. However, early intervention for us may be throughout the early childhood years. And that is where you would pick up students with characteristics of disabilities. You would pick up students who may have issues, but oftentimes systems are not in place for this to be done. And when that child is finished at the early childhood level and there's a disability present or characteristics of, you realize that the student cannot be accepted into the primary system. Why? Because teachers are not equipped, right? They are not trained. systems are not in place. So yes, we say we have, you know, that transition, and the early childhood centers are now open. We have our RAMs, the infrastructure and everything. However, in terms of our human resource, in terms of our training, in terms of professional development, some persons would have done their first degree, but that may have been 10 years ago. What is current now with education? What is happening, you know? We need to be able to have continuous professional development. And if we cannot fix it at the foundation, we're not going to be able to fix it at the tertiary level or at the secondary school level, because the issue, generally speaking, is down at the ECCE level.
You know, you raise the issue of continuous professional development as a mechanism for monitoring and evaluating what we put out to our children, but also as a mechanism for ensuring that the system self-corrects all the time. And it's something that jurisdictions like Finland know all too well. Because in Finland, by example and by contrast, you can't remain a teacher if you are not doing constant research paper. You have to constantly research and publish while teaching. But of course, they also remunerate you for doing that kind of work. And in this system, their teaching goes beyond showing up with lesson plans and schemes of work and having your test, endless series of test papers to mark and so on. You go to some school systems in the UK, the faculty members that do the testing are different from the faculty members that do the teaching. And so there are different systems around the world that countries use based on the cultural norms that allow for that kind of professional development constantly, which is very important. But you also raised somewhat special needs and treating with special needs. And I want to put you on the spot, Mrs. Grant, because we could talk special needs, we could build a ramp in a school, but that does not necessarily mean that we prepare for inclusive education. We still live on an island where those with special needs are choked in a hole down the back of Bonaccord or up at Signal Hill, where our special needs practitioners are still complaining that they don't have the right therapists on staff or available to meet their needs. I was in a primary school recently, and the principal complained bitterly, said, "Oh gosh, see what we could do by the time school opener. He has a special needs child that he has to hold down for the entire day." So that means he can't be principal no day at all. He has to hold this child, hug up this child, the child with his Spider-Man toy, trying to run away, get into the toilet to drink from the toilet bowl, moving up and down, jumping. Could it be injurious to himself? The teachers in the classroom are not trained to treat with that. There are no pupil aides within the school system. No teacher aides there at the school, but the principal just trying to do his best. And that child may not be accepted at Bonaccord or Happy Haven because they say he is not at that level on the spectrum, but he needs to be included in our system. But we don't have any provision. So where do we go in terms of special needs education, Mrs. Grant?
I like the idea of inclusion, but it has to make sense. And no pun intended.
All puns intended.
All puns intended.
Whether it's SENSE or CENTS.
Yeah. And inclusive education makes sense for children who, with certain abilities or what we will call on the spectrum or the severity of their disabilities or diagnosis. So we may have children who are on the spectrum that you may consider mild to moderate. And with a student aid, which we are pushing for, we need student aids, we need student aids, with teachers' aids, with wraparound services, so they may get a little speech, maybe a little, they may need another occupational therapy, physical therapy, which are services that are not readily available or sometimes accessible, and they can operate within our schools. So you give them the supports needed, and it's really difficult to ask a teacher
to manage a classroom when you may have 2 or 3 children in your classroom who will have different abilities or special needs or exceptional needs, because you have the children who write, and causing trouble too, right?
Yes.
And so there is room or space for our special schools, of which we have 2. Happy Haven and Tobago School for the Deaf, Speech and Language Impaired. But of course, as you indicated, those spaces are very limited, probably not equipped well with human resource, the specialized equipments that are needed to accommodate learning and effective learning, and to provide support to these children. So yes, there are children in our traditional schools that would benefit more with the supports in our special schools. But within the traditional schools, those supports are needed. We need student aides to work alongside our students, to say, hey, Alex, pay attention now, or this is what the teacher is saying, or if that child is restless or whatever, you can probably go for a walk with them and bring them back and help them, liaise with the parents, help mommy to understand what the child has to do in regards to homework. Those are some of the benefits of having someone sit alongside your child, and we need that desperately in our schools. From the perspective of student support services, and I was discussing with Mrs. Alexander, we are seeing an abundance of children who are somehow presenting on the spectrum. Now, I would use this phrase.
When the abundance is in an increase in the
number?
number?
Increase, yes. And so you use the phrase Sesame Street, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. We don't know if it's because they're locked down for 2 years on the screen and they may not be used to the classroom, so they need the structure to settle down again and to focus and to get used to school life. Or were these children existing all the time and just being at home and all that stuff, it just exacerbated all these symptoms? But the reality is that it is a definite need within our school to provide services and support to our children. Now, I don't know if I'm getting ahead, but when we talk about our special schools too, one, they are bursting at the seams. And so that dear child that you spoke about, if for some reason, parents decide, okay, we recognize that our child needs assessment and is not functioning in the traditional school and may benefit from our special school, is there space for that child, to get the services and support that is needed? And then when we send them to the special school, are we just sending them just to mark time? Do they have a good curriculum that will cater to the needs of these children? Do they have the assistive devices that will help our children to learn? Do we have, all the facilities that will, develop functional skills? Because after the special schools, what? When they come out, they're going to live home with mommy and do nothing, right? And so can they develop those functional skills? Do they have the wraparound service that will help them become employed and productive members of our society and contribute? So special needs to be a priority. I make no bones about that. It has to be a priority. Something has to be done now. If it then, going to go balance, if it then hit your home now, it might hit your home later. Or you may have a child. I'm looking at my nieces and nephews, and maybe because I'm an auntie, I think they're exceptional, right? And you see how they learn, and you see the level of intelligence. I had a brother, he turned 42 today. Bright. Photographic memory. Everything he hear once, he remember. Failed common entrance. Never finished high school because that was not recognized. There was nothing in place to support him. And I see my nephews and I am concerned because they're in the school. Bright. Right? But in the classroom, what is there to support our children? So we have on both ends. We have the special needs, we may have the developmental You may have people on the autism spectrum, you may have the ADHD, things we hear about, right? Children who may not be able to function. And I'm not even talking about the physical needs, because I know of our young man there, because they're able to function and to learn as long as the facilities are in place that they can operate and navigate and all that stuff. Nothing is wrong with their brain if someone is in a wheelchair or have spinal bifida or something like that. So we have that, but we have the children who have exceptional needs, and we need to look at how are we going to provide support to them, because you may be amazed, they may be the children who will disrupt the entire class because they are bored.
Correct. And you know, I always wonder about the super brilliant among us, the extremely talented child or children that we have in our space. You see these stories on CNN and BBC all the time. Someone going to university at age 12 or 13 and getting degrees. And I always ask myself, is our system designed that if we have such a talent, that talent is able to go into a secondary school at age 8? No. Will a secondary school on this island take a child at age 7? No. Will you take a child at age 13 and say, do a degree? No. Because somehow we have locked age to learning.
That's right.
So we do not only think that there's an age you have to pass before you can move to the next stage. Right. We also think if you have passed a certain age, you can't move to another stage. Right. And so someone spoke earlier about continuous professional learning, but there's also lifelong learning. Right. And being able to move children where they are. Mr. Cornwall, the basic of teaching, we were told, is taking it from the known to the unknown, which, if in theory, in essence, should mean wherever your known is, we should facilitate that and move you, not so. But what can we do for those among us who are extra talented, that have such brilliance that, you know, at age 7 they could be interpreting Shakespeare, or at age 7 they could be sitting in a science lab doing some work. How do we cater for a child that talented in our space?
Well, unfortunately, we offer one size fit all, and everybody's in the same space and operating at the same level. But I know even within some schools, where it's not really a formal structure, there's schools where they attempt to accelerate the students who are the high flyers, because, as was mentioned earlier, those are the students who could be easily bored, and they become crawlers after a while. So there are systems in some schools where there are special classes offered for the accelerated ones so they can move forward. But at the end of the day, sometimes they fall right back into systems when they go to another level. So we have to now chart a program that will allow those students to go forward right to the end. You mentioned SEA, and we know SEA has a entry age, not so?
Yep. Yes.
Right. So the student who might be 9 may be denied the opportunity to write SEA. And I'm saying the child has reached there at 9, why not allow the child to? So as we're saying, we have systems in place informally that could help students to move forward, but there are stumbling blocks along the way. So we have to be able to chart something, as I said, what do we want to see? We have to be able to map it out well so that we can provide services for those high flyers and provide services that will help the ones who need the special needs, so that all of the students can be able to realize their potential.
So we're in primary school, and we're in your class, Mrs. Davison Yates. And the first time I paid attention to your work was through Facebook, where I saw all this lovely decoration. Here you're painting classroom, I see posters going up and so on. And not many teachers take the time to do this kind of work. And the truth is, we may not remunerate you enough to incentivize this kind of outpouring in a classroom. But certainly, you must have some kind of passion for teaching and the work that you do. And you teach at Standard 3, which is a critical midpoint in the primary school system. Unfortunately, I did not get the chance to sit in Standard 3 because I got skipped from 2 to 4. but then, as Mr. Cornwall just said, you get skipped from 2 to 4, but and I still have to wait. So I got skipped from 2 to 4 along with another colleague of mine. We mastered the work, and well, it was mashing up the work, as we say, but that did not mean that they would put me to standard 5 right away and say, let's see if you could do standard 5 work. You wait. You wait your turn because it was common entrance, and for the very earliest, you had to be 10, you know, to do this common entrance. But you at this midpoint stage, and we have all these exams, the national exams, and we get all of these results and all of that returns. What do you think we need to do, especially at your level in the primary school, at this midpoint level in the primary school system, to help those students who are gifted move much further along?
Well, at our school, we do the accelerated thing, right? We put children in the accelerated class and so forth. But as you said, they get stopped because once they don't meet the age, they can't do. I know of one child who couldn't do the SCA last year, and she was ready, right? It has to come from the head, because we are, beside the fact that teachers are not provided with a lot of stuff, that if you don't do it for yourself most of the time, you don't have it, you don't get it, and not everybody, as you all say, would have the extra oomph like me, because I can't come to school and operate in a plain Jane classroom. I cannot. You see the color of me here? I cannot function. I will be depressed, right? So the first thing is that you're making the classroom, this is where we spend I just tell my children, here is like our second home. We spend 8 hours and more here. So we have to be comfortable. Make the children comfortable, yes. But then we create this accelerated program where we work with children who are accelerated, and then bam, they meet SCA thing and they can't do the exam. One child, I had to actually speak to the same child I couldn't do the SCA and encourage. I said, it wasn't your year, Jolie come first. You told her couldn't come first and things, so this year you come in first. And that is the only reason why she got the encouragement and felt good again, because she felt like if I repeating and they might feel that I wasn't ready in her mind, because she stayed down, you come like you stay back. And everybody, all your friends and your colleagues go on and leave you. But as teachers do their best, but we are still stifled with certain things that we have to. Furthermore, we're not supposed to have accelerated class. They're supposed to be at the thing, but we decide that we need to push them a little further. So they get extra work. They get technology. We have technology now. We realize technology. Thank God for COVID. I grew as a teacher because I didn't know one thing about laptop. I used to call my daughter everything. Now you could talk about laptop, but like me doing everything, I came back to my classroom and I am now using technology in my classroom with internet that I provide and stuff. So we need to tap into the new system, technology, and let the children, because these children are even brighter than you sometimes, you know. They'll be correcting me sometimes, but miss, so and so. I said I just to test all to make sure all you're paying attention and things. So you can't let them know that you weren't taking it. And here they ask you, miss, because my train become very dramatic. Miss, you drinking? Yeah, I mean, no, it's just to make sure everybody on point and not falling asleep, right? But we need to tap into our accelerator in really and truly and push them. Don't stifle them to make them. Why can't we have a child who is now 13 doing CXC? Right. I am thinking that once everybody knows Jolie St. John, I'm calling her name. Yeah. She could do CXC right now, you know. Yeah. She could do CXC at this age, but they will say, nah, she's not old enough, and so forth. So the system is stifling our accelerated, and then the crawlers. We're not providing. I mean, we try our best to get use resources to make them think, but they still have to come and sit down and do the same test that everybody is doing. What about including pictures, more pictures, differentiated tests, so that they will be able to perform? Yeah, so even though they're testing a child and it's a child who can't think, see a whole set of words, and I supervisor SCA child told me, miss, I said, you're not writing your SCA here. Miss, that is not the subject I like. So I'm not writing this one, I'm waiting for the maths. I like maths. He wrote nothing in the creative writing. Right? So we need to create differentiated testing so that we will be able to test the crawlers as well and not cater for only one way of testing.
Well, our system seems to cater for those at the very middle, not the top, not the bottom.
Yeah.
So we have this perfect bell curve in our head. The majority is somewhere at the center. You have the minority at the both extremes, and you cater for just the center and ignore the other ends of the curve. But we can't talk education and not talk STEM, and not talk science and technology, especially. And Mrs. Williams Wilson, another creative one in the space. I see the color here. So it's not just for you, Mrs. Davis Yates, right? Another creative one in the space. Science in our school system and science education. Since coming to this office, all sorts of challenges. We heard of the labs that ain't finished, the labs that know how to finish, the labs that don't have gas, who ain't get Bunsen burner, who ain't get stools, who do have PPE and all sorts of things. But science is essential to life and foundation of life itself. How are we going to produce the future that is going to take care of us and each other? And you at Scarborough Secondary, I know you'll have a whole other challenge because all the school will win the seat.
Yes, it is.
But beyond that challenge though, in the classroom, are you seeing changes of attitudes with regards to science in this space? Is science getting sufficient attention in our education system?
No, it's not. And I really have to draw on the fact that science could do so much. Not only at secondary school level, but even in the primary school level. Science has a place that can allow those students that we think are crawlers to be excited about certain subject areas. We need to fuse science, maybe in our maths, maybe in other subject areas. And for me, science is such an amazing subject. Right. And as such, we don't use it to its maximum. We don't use it to its benefit. And I think it all boils down to resources. It all boils down to, us science teachers. If we have certain resources set in place, we will indeed do extraordinary stuff. Let me draw on Bishop's High School and the fact that they had a environmental science day fashion show. And for me, that was so amazing because of the fact that they took that whole science aspect and they would have allowed persons who didn't like anything about science to be excited about environmental science. Not only that, teaching science, students are more excited about the practical aspect. So yes, we will come in the classroom and I will teach electricity. But if I tell them to do a parallel circuit, oh my gosh, they are excited about that fact. So it's taking the practical aspect of science and allowing students to see that we can indeed move mountains on this island. Science has an extraordinary place.
Yes. Yeah. And again, if you're talking STEM, we have to include technology education.
Yes.
The vocational side of things. And I must admit that I went to school at a time when all we were taught is that schooling and education is about a certain list of formal subjects.
We went to grammar school.
Grammar school.
I'm trying not to say we went to serious grammar school. In fact, my year group was the first year group at my school. I ain't calling no name. Nobody knows my school. At my school to do music and art for CSEC O levels, well, this CXC O levels. That wasn't done before. And also technical drawing came in my year group, was the first year group to do technical drawing. But we didn't go into school with the mindset to do no TD and no art and then you was ahead of me, some years before me. All I had was a straight science. And for the time I bust through that door in Mount Mary, you know you're going there to do science, math, English, you're learning the languages. the most practical subject that we enjoyed was agri. And that's why agri had so many children doing agri, because it was the only practical, the only one outside.
We used to go outside, you know.
Or let's go to the school on the hill, please.
That's right.
But now you work in vocational education. You work with the National Training Agency. How can we incorporate vocational education into our school system? Because we're hearing about the children who, the different learners, those who want something different, they want an alternative, they want a balance. How, and COVID has taught us that, the people who bounce back are the people with skills. I see people plotting here now, cooking food, doing all kind of things with their hand now and creating businesses out there. So how do we get that into the school system in a formal and real way?
Well, I'm glad that yes, right?
No, Mrs. Wilson.
All right, yes, Wilson. Right, she would have mentioned, you know, that science, you have science in everything, but when you speak about TVET, we know that TVET it's very resource intensive. It's very costly, I must say, to run a TVET program. But you have to see TVET as an investment in the human capital and that transition to decent work for people. Because and TVET also, you know, it was introduced, the government would have introduced a lot of TVET programs like those level 1 and level 2 for those at-risk youths, the ones that are undereducated, not uneducated, the ones that are undereducated. So they would have provided these programs for those young persons because a gap had existed, and it still exists. But in terms of TVET, it depends on the traction that has to be made with and reviewing those systems that are in place, and the policies, and building the institutional capacity of the teachers, those who deliver these TVET programs in the schools. You would have also mentioned introduction of some programs in the primary school, and that is something that the NTA is actually working on. I don't want to speak too much about it, but it's something we realize that you have to introduce skills that to young persons. They have to have an idea of what it involves. So when they get an idea, you know, the parents normally channel their children towards the traditional academic programs. You know, everybody wants their child to be a doctor, a lawyer, teacher, but these plumbers, these masons, they are making hairdressers more money than the persons.
They're making sense.
Yes, making sense. A lot more money than we would have spent how many years in
Traditional academic.
Yes, traditional academic. Yeah, they're doing their skill, they're doing something that they love. And so what we need to do is align we don't just offer a skills program, we need to align it with the labor market needs of what is really relevant today. So we offer those programs that are relevant to the Tobago landscape. If it is, we need to push TVET forward and find out what it is the students like. You're speaking about the crawlers. If it is they really you don't want to say that, okay, you just push the students who are crawlers, let them, just throw them in the TVET program. No, it's not about that. The alignment with TVET and the traditional academic, they complement each other. So we have to look at it like that. We have to change that narrative where you only push the ones who are, well, crawlers, as the term you all use, into the TVET, because the TVET programs, because TVET and the traditional academic, they actually complement each other and they work well together. And it's also having increasing the access to the quality of the programs, because at the National Training Agency, we develop standards as well. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the CVQ, because Mr. Batiste would be familiar with the CVQ, the Caribbean Vocational Qualification. So that is something, that is an award that is managed by the National Training Agency. So we have these units, these standards that must be adhered to. So we are responsible for monitoring these CVQ programs across these secondary schools. And I must say that we have a lot of work to do in terms of the implementation of CVQ in the secondary school. We're not there yet. We're far from there.
Can I tell you, when CVQ came out, right, when CVQ came out, I heard teachers, colleagues, because I was in the teaching service, I hear
Running,
teachers,
yes.
colleagues saying,
Yes.
not just running for it, but at the time was shunning the program.
Yes.
Because somehow there is a false narrative that TVET is to done children.
Yes.
Right.
There's a false
Neat.
narrative that once the child give in trouble, fling them across in
Yeah,
art.
exactly.
Fling them in a technical subject. Mr. Batista, I'm going to deal with them. Go by yourself. Right? And you run them from your class. But what we do is that we invariably stigmatize
Correct.
the industry. And now we have a challenge, Mr. Batista. You know what the challenge we have now? Finding instructors,
That is it,
finding
right.
teachers.
That is
So
the
even
issue.
schools that once had strong TVET programs, like the Roxville Secondary that we once knew had strong metal work and woodwork. God bless the life of people like Mr. Brown and Winchester and those people that taught those subjects. But since they have left, the programs have fallen apart because it's difficult, incredibly difficult to find the skilled workers to
That's
come and
right.
teach it.
Yes.
Part of the reason though is because what they're not saying is that the skilled workers could make more money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because with that kind of skill, I don't know that kind of skill you will prefer to teach as opposed to working with a Tech or with some
Practically.
engineering firm.
Yeah.
And most of these individuals choose private companies to work for because there is better wages there as opposed to what is commensurate with your work in TVET in the secondary school system where the rest of the school population disregards your work and then enough resources aren't pumped there so you're frustrated. You can't get material, you can't get wood to use, you can't get equipment, your machines to be serviced on time, all of these things. But I want us to stay a little bit on vocational education. I think it's critical. We have to create a parallel system.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like the term you use,
Yes.
parallel system,
Yes.
because right now is a substitute or a compensatory tool to use when the traditional system is not working. So we put that there. I think, as you mentioned, and as Ms. Walker has mentioned, it is a resource-intensive type of a structure has to be developed, right, for it to really work. And as I mentioned before, it has to, what comes out of the school should impact what happens in society. So I would really want to see, well, first, let me say this. The history of TVET, it started in a bad way, right? And that goes back decades ago, right? When it was introduced in the early 1900s and so forth. And the planners of education would have treated it as a second-class program. And as a result of that, the society, persons around us, would see it as that, as such. So that narrative first has to change, because we all know that those persons who are products of that are better off than many of us, right? Better off. So that narratives have to change at the planners level. So where we see resources put in certain sectors or certain schools so that we know that the program can function effectively. Secondly, what I want to mention is that, as I said, what comes out of school should affect society. In the sense that if the schools don't work well, then obviously society will malfunction later on. So I have seen where top students in my class, after leaving secondary school system, well, not to be got a special challenge because a lot of times there's no proper mapping to show where do they go after here. Right? So a lot of parents may feel, oh gosh, I ain't ready for my child to go down Trinidad by themselves or something. And sometimes they don't know where to go from there. They're in a limbo, and then they may end up in some side string work, and that is where their life spiral from there. So you must have a well-established program so students, even at the primary level, they know what they want to be. Right? So when they leave there, they focus their studies here, and then they leave secondary school, they know what just as those who want to do doctor. You know from earlier on, you have to study chemistry, you study bio, you study this, then you go up to this, you have that whole mapping set up. That structure is not there yet for those who want to do vocational studies. And vocational even whether it's in finance, right, vocational, whether it's in the tourism sector, right? So that has to be properly set up. And something I want to mention also is I'm seeing, as you mentioned, inclusive. I think the current system of education is gender biased, right? You see where top students are only girls taking it up. 1 to 10, 9 girls, 1 boy. And we all seen that, and no one is saying anything or doing anything about it. When we are planning Achievement Day at our school, we see the results. We used to do valedictorian, 1 boy, 1 girl. Now you're wondering, the boy ain't really matching up with the girl. She really should make him 2 girls, and we all have that challenge there now. What are we doing to target young men so that they feel that they are part of the education system? They feel that they could become successful members of society within the system. So
it goes back to what are they seeing coming out of primary school? Because you're asking, how many male teachers do you have in the primary schools? And if you go back to there, you realize that who are they modeling? Who do they have to emulate in the primary schools? Sometimes there may be 1 teacher, so probably 1 male teacher, probably none. So we go back into the system to see how do we fix things so that our boys can see, no offense to you, miss, but they can see a male teacher that they can emulate. And they can say, okay, I could understand. And then teaching is happening in such a way that there's no bias there, as you mentioned, because I'm sure when Miss is delivering a lesson, she'll try to reach all the students, the male and the female. How many teachers take into consideration? But how many teachers are able to do that naturally? Because we sometimes have these, it has to be purposeful. That's correct. Because the bias is subconscious. You are a female teacher, you tend to teach the way you were taught, so there's a cycle there already, and then you project certain things within the classroom naturally, and that might attract certain learning styles, and very often the boys are left out. I mean, no excuses for some of the bad performances of some of our boys, because there's also a covert prestige attached to male underachievement. They think it's cool, it's hip, it's okay to be bad, to be disruptive, and so on. But there is absolute need for more males in the education system. Recently, I had cause to say to a friend, I said, boy, when I come in the teaching service, I know no other man in the whole of Tobago teaching English language. In the whole island, no other male teacher teaching English language at one point. And then another point, I had Jared Prime as a colleague also teaching it. And then I had a retired teacher, Mr. Perry, also teaching it. But in the entire island, 3 men teaching in a field of language arts and creative. So how we expect boys to be good writers? But in my classroom, I used to use the examples from the football field with the Barca and the Madrid, and I'm doing argumentative writing or persuasive writing, and I'm allowing the boys to write about why they think Messi is a better player than Ronaldo, and doing the comparison and so on. So they're getting to use what they know and their lived experiences. But as a female teacher, how you treat the boys?
What I was raising my hand about, what about the boys that can't be bright because they got to call them nerd and bully them? What about the boys that is naturally bright, but they just shun their brightness because people say, I just see it every day.
You're talking like a girl. You're CC.
You always know your head big, and we get that when the boys are performing, so they naturally shun and hide their brightness and want to fail, so that they wouldn't get bullied and say, that is a nerd, you're a panty man, as they just call, and all these things. So
the society they emulate is good. They have no male in the classroom.
I wanted to say something. There's a fact that I recently discovered. Every year, actually, there are specific primary schools where the boy has the highest mark. And I'm not sure, I remember Belgarden Anglican. There were about 7 schools, primary schools in Tobago. Every year, they have the top mark, the top average mark. And I don't know how come the system didn't recognize them. Every single year, Belgarden Anglican is one of those schools. It is actually recorded. For some reason, we're not shining it, we're not emphasizing it. But it is
average
for the year or something. There's a recording. I will correct it and I will upload it somewhere.
Well, you know, it's a country school, so let us ignore we up in country.
It's about, there's
If it was a town school, that'd be all over news.
Yeah, there are about 7 schools, and most of them were actually country schools, I believe. But they're the boys, and they're the top of the class. The average, they're the top of the class. But we don't see that. There is no marketing of
I
that.
met a very brilliant young man from Belgarden Anglican recently, who I
Yes, I saw that.
drove to school. And the truth is, he was behind meeting me for a while. In fact, probably before COVID, and it just never happened. And I said, you know what, take some time, because he will end up in secondary school and he may not be interested in meeting you anymore. He may not be interested in talking with that file. His life experience will change and so on. And I was thoroughly impressed, even with his language skills, the way he is able to ask follow-up questions, which means that his inferencing skills were really good, his critical thinking skills were good. And that brings us to another point, Ms. Second. Critical thinking in schools. Outside of the average math, English, science, how do we translate the curriculum into critical thinking elements? And I mean, I think every child should do English Lit. That is, because for me, English literature is one of those areas. I see Mrs. will still say, but for me, English Lit was that subject that helped to teach me critical thinking, because I could pick up a piece of literature and see beyond just the words. My inferencing skills are there. So reading comprehension ought to teach that. But we need to teach critical thinking skills and logics, how people could think through things logically. You know, we see the problem in the wider society with the absence of critical thinking. So how do we achieve that? And you taught lit and geography.
My thing is, I'm biased in that way. I also agree English literature is the best thing next to sliced bread, and everybody should learn English literature. Okay? Introducing that TVET from very early. The whole child approach at early childhood level. The manipulatives in schools, the realia. You have to, technology. We have, somebody was saying recently, I think it was a graduate from CoStat or something, don't waste a good crisis. We went through the pandemic, we came back out, you saw it, and we want to go back to how we used to function before. No. The people who thrived during that pandemic were the people who had that critical thinking, that creative thinking, that creative energy. They were brave, they were not afraid to try something new. Those are the kind of children we want to produce in our society. Those are the citizens who we want. Remember, I was saying, we have to know what it is we want. I think, and conversations like this will help us all to figure out what we want together. But I think the child we want to produce should be a confident, well-grounded child, sure of his or her identity as a Tobagonian, brave, ready to accept any challenge, flexible, and able to accept their own weaknesses as human beings and other people's weaknesses. And I think we can get that through the system if we are willing to invest the time and the honesty. We have to be honest about what we have been doing and what we have not been doing. And we have to be willing to change some of those things that we have not been doing.
I see Mrs. Alexander and Mrs. Grant itching to come in here. Yes.
I hope as a young people listen that you don't block me and turn off the mic.
Oh gosh.
Right? So I'm listening to everybody and I'm excited. Because my area is inclusion and special education, and obviously I have students who are 9 and they are functioning at the early childhood level. So I want to say something here, and I'm speaking for persons who are in the trenches. I am not speaking as an educator or as a parent. I'm speaking to represent persons in the trenches. And I'm asking this openly, do we have any idea how many, because I heard when you started you call the 56 ECCE, the 41 whatever, the 9. But when we come to dealing or addressing persons with inclusion or special education needs, we have two schools, right? However, in Tobago, we basically have a little under 1% of persons or individuals or children who have special education needs. And in our system, if you check Happy Haven and you check School for the Deaf, basically you're looking at about 60-something students, right? One population is 33, I think the other one is 27 or maybe 30. Persons would have dropped out during the pandemic, right? Because the schools were not functional, right? Or they were not functioning relatively well in terms of engaging the students, because some of them, they cannot sit. Attendance skills maybe 1-2 minutes, so you can only sit for 1 or 2 minutes. Added to that, we have 4 to 5 private schools on the island. My school is a private school that I have students with and without disabilities. So I basically try to do an inclusive program because I have paraprofessionals who are privately attached to my school, right? So we basically try to have that support in terms of the teacher's aid and the student aid and the different persons to work with the students. Now, what I am saying, we have within our 5 or 4 private schools, we have at least maybe about 60 students. And added to that, and I was telling Ms. Grant that when we were in discussion, I have 56 parents that would have contacted me during the pandemic and even up to yesterday, because I have a database, with students with special education needs that are at home. Right? Wow. Within this volume, I was telling Ms. Grant, I say at least 10 of these parents have students with autism, children with autism under 5.
Right.
So it's like it would have escalated, right? And before it used to be 80 for every 80 student or every 80 children, you have one person with autism. Now it's 50. But after the pandemic, it could be 40, because if you look at the research and you look at what is happening and parents are reaching out, then something is not right. So we talk about parallel and we talk about what we want to do. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So it may cost millions to build another special school. But if we look at inclusion, and as Ms. Grant was saying, it must make sense. So you wouldn't have persons who are very severe with autism or ADHD and take them and bring them in Ms. Yates' pretty classroom to tear down all these things, right? We wouldn't want that. No, we don't want that. But what are we going to do, right? So we need to free up some space so you have persons who can function, right, with the necessary support, with the necessary paraprofessionals that may be able to function at Bethesda, at Scarborough Methodist, right? Because in our classrooms where we have the hidden disabilities or the learning disabilities, so you don't have the physical features of Down syndrome or the behaviors significant with autism, but you have somebody with dyslexia or dyscalculia or learning disabilities and they are not processing the information, they are taking down the W and the E, and by the time Missy raised her nice board, they're now on the date. Right, what are we going to do with these students, right? It means that we have to include them in the system. But how are we going to do that, right? And that is where, when we look at building capacity for our, our human resource, because if it is that we have these things in place and we look at, I would say, making an investment there in terms of the professional development. So you may not be able to send somebody to do a first degree in inclusion and special education, but you can have continuous professional development when persons are trained to treat with and address. And Ms. Yates was talking about differentiated instruction. We are the ones that have to change it. We are the ones that have to make it happen, because we often say, why them teachers not doing that, or why it is not happening? We are the teachers that need to make it happen. How are we going to infuse differentiated instruction into our system?
And the most important factor for students learning in the classroom is the teacher factor.
Right. So how is it going to happen? Are we going to infuse assistive technology? Because we come out of COVID, we come out of the crisis, and then we want to go back to the chalk and talk. No. The children and them, they're already exposed to it. Let's bring in our whiteboard. So the next time we come in here, Miss Yates should have a whiteboard. So she want to.
My children came in this afternoon and saw me facing the desk like this. Because it was so slight, they could use so on the whiteboard, right?
They usually face each other.
Yeah, so I don't look so.
All right,
Miss, You stop doing things on the whiteboard, you ain't getting them out slides and things.
Right, so they won't get no.
Nah, that is only for occasion tonight. We have to face one teacher in the front of the classroom. So, him or her, miss, when we come back Tuesday, make sure we just come back. We're supposed to go, eh?
We'll make sure they trend them this.
Yes.
But Mrs. Grant, I see you're trying to jump in here as well.
Yeah, just a couple of things. We need to invest, and I love when you started that because it's an investment. And an investment, when you invest your time, your money on us, you expect to get some kind of outcome. And so yes, that mapping where we want to go and all that stuff, so we ain't spending bad money or spending bad time. It's an investment. Part of that is education. And not only, I'm not talking about educating our children because we know that needs to happen, but we need to educate our parents. We talk about TVET, we talk about the disabilities, and parents are lost because they don't know much about when they see their little child. That and without revealing anything, that same child came into the office and the parents were lost. They were like, oh my goodness, right? And so the education has to happen in regards to, and sensitive education, because you don't want to give a parent the idea that all is lost with my child. We say that, hey, this child is normal and this is normal and this is normal and your child is abnormal and don't fit. And parents do not want their children to be classified as abnormal. So therefore they refuse to get that child tested. Because if I go and get my child tested, then that child will be classified and then maybe possibly ostracized because there are no services. So either keep them home or send them to school, and they will make your life miserable because my child is normal. You just, at home he's fine. He's fine. There's always a need to deal with him because at home he's doing well, right? Because they understand that a child who may have disabilities or exceptionalities would probably be treated differently. So we need to have that education piece. And then when it comes to tech work, and it needs to start with ECCE too, a change in our thinking. So parents will feel that even that exceptional child may not want to be a doctor, or may not want to be a physicist, or may not want to go to the moon. That exceptional child may want to open a business. They may want to be a fisherman. They may want to do other things and go into the tech work area. And so we have to change that thinking too in regards to who goes into tech work. Not a throwaway child who you need to keep entertained and they're not thriving in your traditional class. So let it go and learn a trade. You know what I'm hear that? Let it go and learn a trade, fix car or something like that. No, it needs that education that it's okay. The mechanic that fixing all your car, that's surviving. The air conditioned man that had to come to my house to service that air condition every 3 to 6 months. You know, the person who goes out and fish, there's fish boss. There's a fish boss. He sells fish like crazy, and he's making it happen. So we need to change our mindset. And my family is self-employed, and I have seen people look down on them because of the business they're in, because that is not classified as an elite kind of business, right? So we have to change the narrative and the conversation in regards to educating people about the possibilities. And that brings into play my unit too. When we are doing guidance and career guidance and all that stuff, exposing our children, even from that young age, to the possibilities. What is out there? What are you capable of? What can be done? How do you plan from ECCC or before you even get into secondary, how do you prepare for your future? And so I think that educational piece is really important in regards to changing people's mindset. And as we invest, they will see the results and they would want to buy into it, because that is how investments work. People see something working, all of them jumping on it. So make it...
Make it make sense.
But I have a point. You all said that during the COVID period, you all realized a lot of trend happening. You know why I believe? I'm sitting here and thinking, Probably because now the parents realize, because remember the parents send the children off to school, they're not around the children while they're learning, so they're not seeing them. Because I have a child in my evening class that he can't sit well and the mother asked him to take him. He's not sitting still. So he rocks like this every time, but he's learning everything. He regurgitates and say the exact words that I say. If I'm asking him a question, he's saying the exact thing. So parents now realizing that their children have a special needs because they are with them. And they were learning around them. Because all the time they will send them off to the teacher and they come home and the teacher complain and say, well, the child is disruptive. And now my child, but they didn't have time to sit down at home. When they go home, they're playing, mother doing something. She is sitting down and watching the child learning. But during the COVID, they now have to sit with children, to sit with them while they're learning, and they realize, hi, my child can't sit down for 5 minutes to learn, and they start to beat them. Something wrong with you, and then now start to realize that, okay, something is wrong with my child, and then some parents probably now realize that, my child has a disability. I think that's the aha moment why we get recognized it now, because they were around them, learning around the parents, and things, so they realize that the child really have a problem, right? So that is probably why these numbers raised during COVID.
I think
because the only time.
Let me say something. A lot was taught and not caught during COVID. Right? And I'm saying this openly because some teachers were grappling, some were very good with the online system. But in terms of the way that we as a people, the way that we learn, right? You come to school, you're in your little settings, but it is not our norm to sit in front of a device to learn, because that is something for fun. It is not something for learning. And just to be able to do that, in terms of the learning styles and stuff, there are some students who most definitely would not learn that way, right? So it doesn't mean that not every characteristic means that it is a disability. It could be that the concept was not taught, right? I mean, it was not caught, thanks, right? So it was taught, but it was not caught.
Or not even taught, because they say if it's not learned, it's not taught.
Right, so the lesson was done, go to your Google class, do whatever, and for students who are struggling, you would have issues. For those who were average, we still had issues because they were not doing their assignments. So the thing is, how are we going to make it make sense now, right? It just means it goes back to the same thing in terms of equipping the teachers, the educators in the system and the support to address what is happening, because COVID came and a lot came with COVID.
I appreciate that we recognize that there were opportunities that came with the crisis. And the truth is, I have known of Zoom years before COVID, because as one of those teachers in the system that did not limit teaching to 8 to 2:30. I use Zoom with my upper school children. Sometime after 10, we doing class, long before COVID came. But I remember fighting a war in the staff room, saying, we should allow the children to come with their phones and the technology.
Exactly.
We should have open internet available to the and the only thing we focused on was, if they come with their phone, they go watch porn. If they get internet, they go tape people fighting. Somebody go tape me and post me up online. And then COVID came, and the same devices and technology that we were suspending and seizing, we now were saying, embrace it, have it. And I'm praying God that schools are not saying, when they return into school, leave them at home. Because now we should be thinking about how we integrate it into the learning. How do we change some of our pedagogies to suit that? The challenge with COVID is that many teachers they try to transfer exactly what they do in the classroom onto the technology, and that cannot work. You can't send 1,000,001 work to the children, poor penny them to do during COVID. They already can't go outside and play. They have no social interaction. Nobody else beside their family they sing, and then you're giving everybody giving tons of work, just passing on tons of work, tons of work, tons of work. So the wrong pedagogies were used in terms of the transmitting of information. But there's an opportunity for us to integrate technology in the learning. But I want us to switch some gears up a bit. Right? And I want to bring back in the conversation you, Miss Sherla, you, Miss Wilson, and you, Mrs. Walcott. Let's forget the Walcott part. No, Lord, Mr. Walker, you're vexing me. But that is good. But I want to bring you in. I want us to talk a little bit about schools that exist in communities that are normally seen as outside of your urban areas. You are Bethesda government. I represent a district that is seen as the most rural. I was trying to get Ms. Jack, who is the principal of Lansome, to be here tonight, but it's probably not possible for her to be here. And very often schools that exist outside of the mainstream areas. And children from those non-mainstream areas sometimes feel very marginalized by the system. And I hear it all the time. I attended Bishop's High School, and while I was there, children and teachers of other schools said, let us give everything, it's always good down there, which wasn't really the truth, but they always felt like we were some special, favored, privileged bunch, and everybody else had to suffer. And then I taught at Speyside High School, and then I said, but nobody does remember we up in the countryside. Right? And then I've interacted with some schools in some volatile communities, in some outlying communities, and I said, but people are paying attention to what's going on to us here. And of course, the theory in education is Marxist, of course, that raises the point of not all people being equal in the education system, and that the system is designed to be elitist and is designed to allow for some groups to penetrate and others to remain at the back. So you will always create a society of those who have and those who have none. And your experience at Bethesda government, how has that been? Especially in, it doesn't matter the advisor in the division here. If you need to give them flack for not providing services, by all means. That's my job to take it up with the line secretary. But how has been your experience in terms of the delivery of services to your school by the Division of Education?
Well, I'm just there a year and some months, but I find the services are pretty good, for a school, as you said, in that kind of area. You often hear that schools in those kind of areas, they feel marginalized, but I think that from being there, my experiences, they get what they need to get.
Excellent.
The children are performing well.
What's your population size?
152, We get, we didn't get the furniture we needed, but
oh Lord,
I have learned to make
nobody
do.
not getting furniture.
I know. And I heard they're still in transit, so we're hoping that they will land.
Yeah?
Yeah, but we try to use what we have. I always say that nothing must stop the learning process.
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing must stop. If the ministry, my philosophy is this, if the Ministry of Education or the division doesn't give me what I need at the time, Honorable, I will go out of my way to attain it for the course of education. That's right. I am not going to sit down like some people sit down and bash it. They're not giving me this. Let us see what we can do. Let's see what, we know what the ministry cannot do, but let's see what we can do to let the wheels continue to turn in terms of delivering quality education to our students.
And thank you for that, because we don't know how privileged we are. I remember going to do some work at Islington Primary in St. Mary, Jamaica. That's as rural as it gets. And we were, at that time, doing a program where we were teaching English as a second language. So we were going into the classroom, talking to the children in Jamaican patois, that being the language, and then teaching them English as a foreign language, as opposed to assuming that English was their first language. Because as linguists, we know that the vernacular is the first language, and the first language is not English. But while there, I remember that one day they offered me lunch from the school lunch, and I turned it down. My heart couldn't come to eating the chicken back that they stewed on, and I'm like, chicken back with some rice, and I appreciated every bit of grub that I did not take when I was a student.
That's right.
Every bit of school feeding. And I'm not saying that the system we have is perfect and the way we treat teachers and schools are ideal. I think a lot better can be done. But I also think we have to find ways of pushing through and recognizing that success comes from using what you have. It comes from making the best out of what you have, not what you wish you had. And that's what makes the difference between schools that are successful and schools that are unsuccessful. I'll move from Bethesda to Scarborough Secondary. and you'll have a mighty, mighty problem there. Big problems, especially infrastructural problems.
Yeah.
How has that impacted the delivery of the curriculum in the school space?
Well, for me, we spoke about technology, and technology is a big thing. And we had COVID, and they told us to go back pre-COVID. Yeah. So in that gap, technology would have, I would have said, failed students, because the same concept you mentioned that we, parents would have bought their laptops, we would have gotten laptops from education. Education would have given students tablets, and we are at that stage where, we are trying to tame students and telling them they can't bring their laptop, they cannot bring their tablets. And for me, I find that is a whole pet peeve, because we were at a stage where we could have done so excellent, and we are basically going backwards. You understand? The whole pre-COVID. I would have because my thought process, and I had this down pat in my mind. I was like, okay, going back out to school, I have my phone, and I'm seeing and visualizing students with their laptops in front of me, and we're doing a near pod in class, and students engaged, and I no laptop, no internet at school. Students can't get the password because, as we state, we frightened, they watch porn and do all the other. So we think basically on the negative, not understanding that the positive may far outweigh the negative. And that for me, I think we need to understand where we are at, understand the students that we have, and understand that yes, we're telling them technology, 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 and then telling them they can't bring their phone to school, they can't bring their laptop, they can't. It doesn't.
That's kind of sad, eh?
It is.
And
it is.
I could tell you now that our vision for that new Skyrosec is building the region's first smart school. That is the vision.
Wow.
Having the region's first smart school, and in the interaction with the CDB, we have been insistent on that. And what does that smart school mean? It means that we are having school where technology is effortlessly integrated into the classroom.
Yes.
It means that our technical vocational subject areas have high-tech equipment. It means that our children are leaving secondary school being able to hook up a computer onto a car and know how to read that and what that means, so they understand the mechanics of the thing. So they're going beyond the very manual lifestyle that we have been accustomed to. And if we can't dream in education, we can't dream anywhere else. If the vision of education is not the place where dreamers go to work, wake up and dream things for the island, then we're wasting time dreaming everywhere else.
True.
Because all of the fancy things we want in Scarborough and Scarborough to look will never materialize if the education system does not facilitate that kind of creative output. And so, if for nothing else, we have to give our teachers and our students permission to dream again. And giving them permission to dream again means that you're giving teachers and students permission and liberty to be as creative as they possibly can. Some teachers were shocked when I told them, I said, look, when I was in Space High School, I used to just get up, we walk to the gate, security count them, we count off the heads, I say, all right, so you know how much I have, and I go on. I have had classes, sometimes I walk in the whole, teaching economics, sixth form, macroeconomics in Caribbean studies, and we walk in the village looking for indicators of economic development. We look in how much school we have, how much business we have, what kind of economic activity do you see, how is that jetty and anthropogenic features, that jetty affecting the economics of a small community. I can't teach that in the classroom. I could teach that outside. I've had moments where I take children and say, let's go to Shallaville. You want to hear Tobago Creole, Tobago dialect? Let me go up there. Let's analyze how they speech patterns and so on, and look at how they code switch. Try talking to them in standard English, see how they will respond. See if they have the ability to code switch between the formal and the informal and so on. All of those things you can't teach except you are able to immerse the children in the experience. And that's why I say we have to give teachers and students the privilege of dreaming beyond the four walls of the classroom.
Right.
If that isn't allowed, then it's difficult to deliver the lesson in the way you want to deliver the lesson.
Right.
Could you say that that was possibly because of the factor that maybe the amount of students in the class? Because trust me, I taught electricity, and I'm going back to electricity because that was the last topic I taught. And my whole vision was I wanted to take these students and carry them to Cove and allow them to experience this whole and then I sat down and thought about, all right, paperwork with regards to leaving students, taking students on a field trip, moving them out of the classroom. And they say, me, I am going through that.
Can I tell you a joke? I only found out a month or so ago, right? When I was doing a tour, looking at the lands of Scarborough Sec, that if you are taking the children outside of the compound, as I was doing, you really and truly needed some paperwork
So
to be done.
you are talking and I'm
So
like,
I only found out because I said no, if you build a school here, they set them right across there, and there's a tunnel. You could just walk out and I said no, but every time you need to do the paperwork, and in my mind I'm like, right across,
I was
right across
really
there.
impressed about the fact that you said you went by the security and they count the heads and you left and I was like, wow.
No, well, I mean, I guess the principal allowed that facility, right? But the overarching point I want us to get to is that we have to create a space where teachers feel enabled and empowered to be as creative in terms of how they deliver their lessons. Or else you will get robots that just come to the classroom. I tell you what the curriculum, this is what we have to teach. You make your lesson plan commensurate with the things inside CXC curriculum there. You make sure you teach all of the things going to come. You look at how CXC structured the exam and you say, all right, they will pick 2 questions from this section, that section. So you decide which topics you want to do ahead of time, learn them. You go, you mash up the exam, you pass, bye-bye. You go UE and become someone else's problem. But that child is not as innovative as you want the child to be. And therein lies the challenge. We could just churn out some passes, or we could churn out some creativity. And as because you want to get, go ahead.
In terms of, you would have asked the question if it is they would have received enough resources. As I would have mentioned, TVET is very resource intensive. So one of the things that the teachers would complain about is not getting sufficient resources to carry out the practical nature of TVET. Well, TVET was affected, that practical nature of TVET was affected with COVID because they wouldn't have been able to carry out those skills, some of the skills remotely. So they had to wait until they come back out into the secondary, in the schools to do those practical courses. But I would have visited a number of schools during the secondary schools over the past couple of weeks, and that is an issue that they're dealing with, not having sufficient resources to carry out the practicals of these programs. So, why Speyside is not doing TVET anymore?
Ooh.
CVQ.
That's a hard question there. No,
but they started out very well.
We started, yes, we did. I was there when it started, so I know, and we were very strong on the
very.
I think part of the challenge is that at one point we had the teachers left and moved on and up. Of course, they get and take work, they get a big work somewhere else, and it was difficult for a while getting faculty to do the delivery. Sometime, either just before COVID, they got a female teacher from Trinidad that came into the space, so they may reverse to.
Well, I'm hoping that they do.
In fact, I'm going to insist, and I will share some ideas with you all before we leave, and to get a feeling of how you think those things will. But we have to invest some more in TV, in technology education.
Yes, Chief. Piggybacking on what was said, exposing the children beyond the classroom, because that is sometimes where most of the learning can take place. for me to teach building design in a classroom is difficult. I have to cut them beyond. For them to understand the operation of a crane, it's difficult. I'm seeing one down in Crown Point lighting up blue, and that could be used as a exposure. If somehow that process of getting them outside the classroom could be a little bit more pliable, right? I know there is a reason why it is how it is,
Flexible.
but at least that is a stumbling block a lot of times for a lot of teachers, because they will see that and say, and better just do what I do and show them some pictures or a Google video or a YouTube video. But if you really get them outside there, it could expose them a lot and make them enjoy the subject and their lessons.
But you can tap into parents also, because as a parent, I always say I can take my child to places where you may have problems taking the child. As a parent, I can. So when you network with other parents, and we can all decide we will go and do this. So where you may have a stumbling block and have a paperwork that may take 6 months or 6 weeks to get done, as parents, we can provide that kind of support. So you look to tap into where else can you get support when you figure that you may be coming across some red tape or some stumbling block. You raise this your parents, and we have to discuss parents. Schools do well when schools are surrounded by a community. Right? It's a community that drives a school to success. A community. And we have to build stronger communities around our schools. Too many schools, the PTAs are not functioning well. Too many schools, PTA executives, like they don't want to leave at all. The children graduate and they ain't graduating at all. They can't tell last they have an election. So they have no string-a-ling, no about in the school, but they're still there on the school executive. And so they're unable to really understand the nuances of the day-to-day operations of the school. And parents have to look at some parent education as well in all of this. What role do the parents play in all of this? Parents and guardians. Are we using our information division properly? Or is it just propaganda machinery? Are we using it like North Korea to prop up elements of the establishment, or are we using it as part of the wider educational drive of the society? Where can parents actually outside, and COVID brought that, an opportunity for parents to be there alongside the child and see what's happening. In fact, it forced that to happen. But post-COVID, and we're entering a post-COVID stage now, how do we keep the parents involved? How do we keep the parents in the classroom? And teachers need not be afraid that a parent might hear when they use a wrong grammar, or you spell a word wrong. I mean, you're a human being. You will use a wrong grammar ever so often, especially if you're as country as I am. Or you spell a word wrong, given that all of us are accustomed to spell check now. And so don't be afraid of parent involvement in the room. And parents, that is not an excuse to be abusive to faculty and to overstep your bounds and to try to show up teachers in the presence of your child. But it's about understanding that you are very much learning as your child. So that child is studying, the whole family has to be studying, and the whole family has to be engaged. That's what the success is. Anybody, ask yourself, think about your own life experience. You think when you're studying, some other child could have been making noise and disrupting your studying? You think when you're studying, mommy and daddy could have been doing? We are here in this room having success, some measure of success, because it was a whole of family approach to our educational success. So it is proven that when the entire family is part of the education process, there is success. And how do we get the family more involved in the school? How do we do that? One of the things, and Batop bishops all they want, one of the things that bishops have going for it is that element of transition for families. In the simple house structure. It doesn't matter where I go. As I meet somebody who is bishop, and the first thing I ask, so house you was in? Me and ask who teacher, me and ask where you study, me and ask where you graduate, and ask where they like and hate in school. The first thing I ask is, what house you was in? And the reason why the school has such a strong sport house culture is because in the school there's a program whereby you go to the same house that your parents and your siblings go in. So if 5 of you went through the school, 5 of you in the same house, what ends up happening is that houses become family culture. So let's move that from a house to the whole of the school. Imagine what will happen if schools engage families in that way. You will start having families saying, I want my child in this school too because I went this school and daddy went this school and sister went this school and there was success. You get loyalty. You get people who are willing to donate monies to the school, donate things to the school, buying to the school messaging because they feel like this school has been good to my family. So it's in the interest of schools to ensure that parents and the wider family are part of the school program. We have to bring them into that culture as well in order to achieve the successes that we want. But there's some thoughts I have almost immediately. Well, one, I have decided by the hook or the crook we're going to start the special needs school at Signal Hill. And I want it started in this calendar year. Because every fiscal year in the budget we assign, well, we end up getting about $1 million to it. At the end of the fiscal year, we buy out the $1 million and use it on other things. But the school never gets started, never gets done. So I insist on us starting, but I believe it has to be a multiple approach. The school has to be for the children who cannot be integrated seamlessly into the regular system. But we have to work on the integration of others in the regular system. How do we do that? That might mean decreasing class sizes. It might mean ensuring that we have furniture that are adaptable to the needs of special needs children. It will mean having teachers retooled. We have several teachers in this space who studied special ed, but never taught in special ed. Because when they came into the system, we took them and made them regular primary school teachers and did not allow them or we didn't employ them as special ed teachers specifically. So that's an opportunity we have to try to grab back. We, when we look at Roxborough Secondary, immediately my thoughts are on creating a seamless system between Roxborough Secondary and the Roxborough Trade School, and creating a technical vocational center that starts at secondary but ends beyond secondary all the way up to tertiary. Because that school is huge in terms of size and grossly underpopulated. So there's an opportunity for us to transform that school. And of course, we'll have the regular subjects. So you don't have to worry about the child learning math, English, and sciences. Those will remain there. But they have an additional opportunity in that we make it a school that can go from secondary all the way to tertiary when it comes to vocational education and giving them that best fit in vocational education. So my thoughts are there with that school in that regard because the physical plant allows for that. I also already spoke about Scarborough Sec and the vision for the new Scarborough Sec, and soon we will start the engagement with the end users, the students and the teachers and the parents. How do you envision your school? What do you want in your school? And we won't make that a long process because the CDB already indicated to us it will take us about 2 to 3 years to build the smart school that we want. But it's either we could take the 2 to 3 years and build a smart school, or we could build a regular school, just put up some blocks and concrete and it ends up like Scarborough Anglican, where half the school still empty and not populated with equipment as yet and all sort of madness happening. But I want a smart school for Scarborough Secondary. It has to become the school of schools and the example for where all our other schools need to go. We also have to have a discussion about extracurricular activity or co-curricular activity. Research has shown that students who are involved in co-curricular activity tend to perform better. And I saw it as a student and I saw it as a teacher. That the students who were excelling were those who were in the PAN, who were athletes, who were in football, as opposed to those who just closed down shop everywhere else and was just now focused on books. So where do we see co-curricular activity? We have to have a discussion about that. Where do we see co-curricular activity? How do we integrate that? Because of course teachers also complain that those in co-curricular activity miss enormous amount of school time, teaching hours. Sometimes it's difficult for them to get the information when they return to school. Football season, you miss your footballers whole season. They happy to go play football, to practice and to go to Trinidad and every pan time. They beating pan and class going on. They happy to beat pan the whole time. So how do we do the integration to co-curricular? Do we as an island need to start considering school beyond 8 to 2:30
That's right.
p.m.? How do we extend the hours of school? Should the THA consider paying more to extend the hours of schooling? Because most parents are working now, and work ends for most people at around 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. And perhaps the opportunity between 2:30 and 4 that we could get some of those extracurricular things in without being as disruptive.
Right.
Yes.
At Space and High, there was one day in every cycle that because we used a
9 days.
a 6 day or 9 day or something.
6 days.
Sadly.
So it wasn't a regular 5 day thing, but I think it was a 6 day cycle that we used. But there was one day in every cycle where the entire afternoon was dedicated to co-curricular activity on the timetable, where teaching shuts down across the school, and you go to your clubs, you go and you do that.
And a similar experience.
Right? That happened as well. So we need to become more purposeful in some of those things.
But I think it's something that used to happen because I remember going to Scarborough Secondary School and in time with Mr. Warner.
Yes.
And we had co-curricular activity every Friday
We have it in the
evening
primary
as a
school as well.
right?
Yeah.
And for me, the extra, because even today I was sitting down thinking that some of the things that I would have learned from today are things that were not things you sitting in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I know that foods was one of the parts of the co-curricular activity, and that was with Miss Bob.
Right.
And one of the things I remembered Miss Bob telling us, when you are drying your plate, make sure that you have the towel holding the plate and you are drying the plate. And that is something that has stuck with me for today.
Right.
You understand? So it really and truly has its place.
Life skills.
Yeah.
I remember when my first Sunday in university, we were on a flat, 7 fellas living on a flat. So the way my hall is situated, you have 7, everybody have their own bedroom where we share kitchen and communal spaces. So 7 of us, and I'm there, brand new in this country, brand new in this hall, and looking at and we have children from all over the Caribbean, students from all over the Caribbean. From St. Lucia, we had one Vinci person, Jamaicans, etc. And we there, and I see them struggling to open corned beef. They have to break away the thing, they have to use knife to open corned beef. And then I end up cooking the pie, and they're like, oh gosh, thank God you come, because we tried to cook the pie last week and it didn't come out so good. So for a while, after a while, I started baking bread and all kind of things, because those were skills I had from home. And it's amazing that we don't think much of those basic life skills. But I've seen children go to university and bake bread and sell, and cook food and sell, and plait and make extra income. So life skills are just that they help with life in general, and in school supposed to teach those life skills. And those skills should be inclusive of business planning, financial management, hygiene, how to take care of yourself, basic grooming, etiquette, how to influence friends and win enemies. Those basic things have to be taught in the system, and of course we can't leave out patriotism in it. And we're talking patriotism, the Secretary of Education mentioned it. Fixing the curriculum, making some curriculum inputs. Specific to Tobago.
That's right.
So you're learning local but thinking globally.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm a history buff. So we need to, how do I put this? We need to understand where we come from, and I know it sounds cliche to know where we're going. We need to understand what Tobago went through, because it's distinctly different from the experience and history of Trinidad. And when I went to school, one of my subjects was history, and there was not a lot of focus on the history of Tobago. The challenge is very rich. It really is part of something that we can even export I think it will build value, our value and appreciation of this island, because you hear people and they say, I don't want to be here and all that stuff. And I understand some of the thoughts behind that, lack of opportunity and stuff like that. But it's a beautiful island. Beautiful island. And we need to understand, yes, and we need to understand how it came that way so we can preserve this beauty.
And appreciate it.
And appreciate it.
Right.
So it needs to, we need to understand, so when we go, we can talk about our history and where we came from, and then we have a sense of where we want to go. And you know, when you talk about co-curricular, just briefly, it needs to start in primary school. I remember baking in primary school, right? And sports and stuff like that. And my memories of that is cemented because my education from primary school was so, I had teacher Vida. When I saw you, remind me of my teacher. It was so like, and she taught like this with her eyes open, and you as a child there with your eyes open too. And Miss, when I saw your classroom, I was like, yeah, but going back to history, yes, we need to, we really need to make that. I think it's something that I would support 100%. We need to teach our history.
One of the reasons why a lot of Tobagonians don't know Tobago.
Right.
And because of that, I think it's a very good idea to implement that little aspect of Tobago in the curriculum. A lot of persons don't know where the brain coral is located, don't know any history about or the different estates within the island.
Right.
And so I think it could only benefit the Tobago child as well as the family and the child, because I'm sure parents will learn a thing or two as well coming out of that aspect.
And integrate the field trips too.
Yes, you know, I like the idea when I heard Secretary speaking about adapting the curriculum and making it more Tobago-centered. I like that because even as I reflect on our reading books, we always read about terminologies and places that don't exist and some big words that the children don't know. It's time we start to read about Charlottesville and Lands for Me and fishing and all these forts that exist, because as Sir said, there are a number of places in Tobago and with our rich culture that we don't know about. That's one. And two, it promotes employability. Because we are living in a tourist-rich island.
Right.
And because our curriculum is not adapted to suit that, we're making some bad moves.
They don't know
Because
what to tell them
that's
when they
right.
come.
So when we teach our children about sea and fishing and how to corn fish, we are opening magnificent avenues of employability. No longer must our children say, I have all them subjects and I can't find a work.
Right.
We are gearing them for the local market, the global market, and the international market. And I think it's critical at this juncture that we adapt, we have curriculum change to make it more Tobago-centered.
Yeah, that is what's
Yes,
okay.
right.
All right.
We have to love ourselves.
Yes.
We have to love who we are. We want to move towards autonomy. If we're going to do that in a genuine way, we must have a sense of identity of who we are. And we can infuse the history, the dance, the
Food,
drama,
the drama.
food, the values in almost every subject, whether it's geography, history, mathematics,
Technical drawing.
technical drawing. We can infuse it. That is where, if we want to embrace autonomy in a genuine and authentic way, we have to look at ourselves and we have to like ourselves. We have to like who we are, where we came from, and where we all want to go as a people. So that curriculum adjustment, mandatory, necessary, timely. Right now is the time for it.
While I agree, I'm listening, right? But sometimes we say curriculum and we think document, but the curriculum is everything around us. It's everything that we do. So we don't need to change stuff, but as Miss said, we can adapt. So while you are teaching a lesson, and that is where the differentiated instruction comes in, and you have your assistive technology and everything. So you may be doing something, so you have your whiteboard, and you can focus on maybe, say, pulling seine or whatever. So you bring it into the lesson, into the classroom. You have the educational field trips where you go out. So in that way, the curriculum is everything that happens. So oftentimes we say, change the curriculum or do whatever, right? And that is a whole, I would say, reinventing the wheel. But we can adapt and we can infuse and we can integrate to make it more, you know, personalized for us. Added to that, I am thinking for persons now that after persons leave Happy Haven and Tobago School for the Deaf, where do they go? And having been in that area for years and years and years, you know, that is something that is very, very, I can't even find a word for it, right? But yes, we had TechVoc, and TechVoc basically is not existing anymore because it's not under education, it's under social development. And all these students, 30 plus students, where are they? Right? So I'm saying, I'm listening to you with Roxborough Sec. Is it that, and we are looking at the CVQ. So oftentimes I would have personally gone with students, right? Those who are hearing impaired, so you're signing for them to get into the height program and into the YTEP program, and they are not accepted. Okay. Right? They are not accepted, right? Because of whatever issues, right? Maybe they may not have the academic skills to be able to. However, with the life skills, so if life skills are incorporated, not that we need to change the curriculum because we are not going back, we are going forward, we're going 20 years. So you integrate. So you have your life skills in terms of, you know, time, money, certain things that you need to deal with, right? And you integrate that into the curriculum. So when the student is, if you can, with Miss Walcott, we can, you know, as I should say, make some investments. So when they leave and they are transitioning into the world of work, something is happening there, but oftentimes there's no plan. There's no plan for them moving forward. What are we going to do? So yes, we are building schools, but are the schools equipped with a space for them to be able to go to do that, you know, that TVEC thing, you know, to have your CVQ? Is it something that could be, instead of you are going there, could it come to them? Could it be, you know, incorporated into the curriculum so that everything could be done in such a way that everybody wins and it makes sense, right? And that is what we need to look at.
Mrs. Carruth, I keep saying Mrs. Carruth Walcott.
When Secretary Hackett would have mentioned that, you know, making it more Tobago-centric, my mind immediately ran to, you know, TVET and, you know, and I would have mentioned it before, you know, aligning the TVET programs with the needs of the labor market. So we have to make it relevant to what is offered, what we have here in Tobago. I think in Speyside or Charleville, you would have introduced a boat maintenance or boat building program. So that was synonymous with that community. So it's actually developing those programs that are synonymous with the different communities. So that is what my mind ran on, you know, having those programs that make sense in those different communities. And making it more Tobago-centric.
You have to be willing to go bold, eh?
Yes.
Let me give you an example. In Speyside, every single year, we have schools from Trinidad come up with scores of children that go and learn to dive and become PADI certified. And I have never been fortunate enough to have that same program at Speyside High School that exists on the shores of some of the most beautiful reefs, and that calls itself the Speyside Mantas. Think about that for a moment. We have Maple Leaf coming up, International School this, we have all of the so-called prestige schools coming up. They're 30 students at a time, and I know because sometimes we have to keep little bonfire for them, have to bring out the young people to give them souvenirs, make them feel welcome in the community, because it's part of tourism, it's educational tourism. But my children are not involved in any of those programs. They're not going to learn to dive. They're not becoming PADI certified. And so now a community that once had a situation where perhaps 1 in every 10 individuals were PADI certified, that has diminished significantly. We have no PADI certified instructors local to the community anymore, because those who were probably migrated for opportunities. We have a few dive masters left that are PADI certified, but the point is we're missing an opportunity. All of that exploit is right there at their fingertips. But who will exploit? Will we bring somebody from somewhere else to run the filter dive shops in the village? Who will go and explore and make money from all of the rich assets we have in the water? Who will our marine biologists be? We have Boat Island there wasting away, when really and truly that should be set up in such a way that our young people from those neighboring communities can have access and have that kind of learning. And so we can't overemphasize the importance of the kind of TVET and technologically driven education we're talking about.
I want to ask something. Could it be, because say like you all were talking about the scholarships, right? In terms of how many boys or how many girls would get it. And we know for Tobago, I think there was only one. Is it that something could be implemented, systems could be in place where scholarships could be given for our students, our children in Speyside, High, Bishops, wherever, that in terms of allowing the students to want to now look at this opportunity or career in this area? Because if it is that things like that could be done, so everybody looking for this scholarship to go and be a doctor, but is it that something could be done with the THA that scholarships could be allowed, could be afforded or
in a
given,
wider area.
right? So you have persons who maybe you have 4 scholarships for Tobago, because if it is as you are saying, we are going on our own, what are we doing for the Tobagonians? What are we doing for them? So the Trinidad and Tobago government didn't give, only 1 scholarship was given. However, we know that persons perform extremely well. So what can we put in place, or what can be implemented to have students feel the need to want to stay here and want to go out there, get their training and come back, and give back to Tobago? Because those are some of the things we could look at, because the opportunities are there, but persons, maybe they are not cognizant of what is there, right? And how can they be if we do not, share it with them or give them these incentives and stuff like that to be able to do it?
Certainly. We have been here for a little over 2 hours.
Oh my God.
And
Nice.
we discussed quite a lot. And the online audience, they have been sharing quite a lot of information too. Mostly in support of the things that you all have been saying. I think in Tobago we have very talented, very intelligent people who are capable of moving the society forward. The Tobago we have is a Tobago that have produced many leaders and captains of industry across the country and the world. If we had to go back to this country being independent, when we got our independence, and we'll be 60 years this year, most of the leaders in the civil service then, many of them came from this very small island, which at the time we had probably 1, 2 schools, 3 schools at the time, 3 schools. Scarborough Second Compre as one, and then probably Harmons was probably in at the time. It was a private and convent and so on. But the point is, we didn't have all of what we have now. We certainly have a lot more now than we had then. And farmers, people who were hustling on farms and sending goods out to steamships, were producing the likes of Dr. J.D. Ella, first PhD in anthropology in the entire Caribbean region. The same Dr. Vanna James, who are all over the place, is farmers, humble farmers, producing that. At one time, Charlottesville produced more PhDs per capita than anywhere else. And they had no big school there, as we will say, no big tertiary institution there. So it means that we have, in essence, a natural ability to be able to produce greatness from our education system.
That's right.
We have not dug in our heels for a while. We have not allocated resources properly for a while. If you look at the space and look at sometimes the things we spend more money on versus what we spend less money on, and the opportunity costs attached to that, we'll have to ask ourselves whether we have been responsible stewards of the resources that we have when it comes to our young people and our children. Education is an inherent right. It's a right for each of our children, including and not the least our special needs children. In fact, in my mind, they deserve more Because that's what justice is. Equity is about giving everybody the same. But justice is about giving those more who need more in order to allow them to achieve the same outcomes. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm appreciative of all of you in this space that came this evening and shared so liberally, shared from your own experiences in your classrooms. I want to again say special thanks to Scarborough Methodist for housing us this evening. We have wanted, we wanted to do this in the most creative way possible. And I thank you all for subjecting yourself to the hard wooden benches that have become synonymous with primary school learning, you know, and I mean, even we will have even this furniture that we have challenges with. If we have stronger TVET programs, we don't need to buy this from anywhere else.
That's right. We can make
schools will be repairing their own desks, and children will be taking pride in the outcomes, making it and so on, and taking pride in the outcomes. And so overall, we have work to do. There is no reason why Tobago, as an educational district, cannot be the best in the country, especially since we have a smaller population size with a greater spend per child than anywhere else in the country, maybe even in the region. Our outcomes have to be greater. And yes, that means some pressures on you teachers, but the state has to support you some more. Because we didn't even talk this evening about the increments that we owe all you. Right? We didn't talk about the gratuities we owe you all. That we owe you all. Plenty gratuities we owe you all. The contracts you're not getting on time. The fact that you're overwhelmed. The fact that you ask for materials and it takes so long for the materials to come. And sometimes you go down there and Miss Prime and them stingy with the little products in the back. And so on. All of those things are issues that we are operational issues that we have to fix. Operational issues that we have to fix, that we have to remedy.
At one point, for us to be the greatest little island in the world, I find not saying that. You're saying region, the greatest little island in the world, we have to make our people happy. And if teachers are not happy, you will not get production. You will not produce happiness. The children wouldn't be happy. It will trickle down and everybody will be angry and come in school and you're just doing a job because you want a little pay. But if you all make us happy, well, me happier, you know, probably I might be painting out on the wall, I might paint the outside now, and, you know, and don't worry about education, give me the paint and them kind of thing, you know, and say, all right, that's okay. If I ask this, I get it in the brink of an eye, so that you all think about bringing out projectors in the classroom, in the school with internet, and let the teachers get to the program and not going back to pre-COVID. We have moved past that.
Virtual reality.
Exactly. Hi.
Smart boards.
Smart board that we're touching and we writing on the, because I have a little thing that I was writing with. Make it big so that we can write and it's showing up on the computer.
Right.
You understand? Make it smart. We can't go back to pre-COVID. COVID is nothing but pre-COVID now. And now we are moving forward. It's 21st century. Let us go forward and then make it be the greatest little island in the world. We have to set the stage and the pace.
Set the stage.
We have to set the stage. We ain't following nobody. We want to be in front. People have to follow us.
Definitely. Sure.
And don't take off the camera and the mic. The crisis that is currently here in Tobago regarding staffing and teachers for the special ed school. In terms of addressing that, will it be something that would be fixed sooner than later? When I say fixed, because I left the education system in 2017 and went privately. And after I would have moved on, several of my colleagues, there was an exodus from the Tobago School for the Deaf. I'm not sure about Happy Haven, but persons would have retired because, you know, as we know it, persons who go into special ed or inclusive education, basically you stay there until Jesus come or until you retire. Right? So persons would have retired. And up until now, we are in 2022, and I am very cognizant of the fact because I'm often called to, you know, address certain things. And being with the Down Syndrome Family Network, we basically try to feel out teachers, stakeholders in terms of getting them trained, not with a certificate or anything, but in terms of information. So I'm saying this openly to say that the crisis that is now faced by parents, right, and my colleagues who, we have teachers who are working with 7 autistic students, right, and only 1 teacher's aide. And we have persons who are actually aides alone working with a class of 9 persons with learning disabilities. You know, what is going to be, what systems are going to be put in place? Because oftentimes I have colleagues who would have gone to UE with me. They are qualified, persons are home, and nothing, but it seems as if nothing is being done. So when I speak here tonight, I speak on behalf of my colleagues who are under serious pressure. Yes. Parents who are in the trenches, yes. Miss Grant who have to deal with all these calls and they are coming in only to burn down student support services, because what are we doing for the people? And you know, I'm talking and I'm saying, what is going to happen, because Scarborough Sec may have a shortage and the primary school may have a shortage and the ECCE, but there's nothing for the special ed persons, there's nothing. And we are saying, but persons are not trained, because then you have a master's at that level and then you do not have that first degree. But USC have that first degree now, right? So persons are saying we are not trained, but until persons are trained, you know, we are saying, while the grass is growing, the cow is starving. What could be in place for them? Because what are we going to do?
Well,
Something has to be done.
There are too many professionals in the space who have not been given the opportunity to teach these young people. So let's start there. We need to hire them. Yes. And let me give a firm commitment to that. There is nothing special that needs to happen to hire them. If for nothing else, the THA is empowered through the executive to hire people on contract. We do it all the time. Because I have people on contract and pay them big money all the time. So I'm saying to education, in the presence of the camera still on and the microphone still on, hire the people and them. September should not arrive and they're not hired. I also said to the secretary recently, there is a need for student aides and teachers aides in the regular primary school system. They should not start September and they're not there. Find the people, they're home someplace unemployed, hire them and let them come and do the work. That's about investing things in the right place. If it's good investment, and I don't like to do these kinds of comparisons because it's apples and oranges, but if it's good investment to invest in a Boku goat race, and it's good investment to invest in a jazz, and it's good investment to invest in our next carnival, and so on, it's also good investment to invest in our students, especially those with special needs. So hire them, hire the aides. So I've been given an undertaking that September morning, they will be coming in, but for special needs, I will want to suggest through you are advising the division, that you will need to hire them in advance of September, so you could do some pre-training, so that September morning they're able to matriculate into the system much more effortlessly. The regular primary school, fine, but those with special needs need a little more oomph to think. We may not have the full number of trained personnel, but we could certainly have aides until we do. Yes. And we also have to get therapists on board. Right. For some reason, we have not hired the right therapists in the system. Right. I spoke with Happy Haven principal, and she listed about 4 different therapists that they need access to. Occupational. And on the chat, someone was just saying from Castor that they're occupational therapists, and they're selling fish now. Right. And if you're listening still, I message you in your inbox saying, send me your contact number, because we need people like that in the system. We need more than one. So we need to get them. We need to get them hired. Because the truth is, we have been unfair to people with special needs, and I feel strongly about that. I had an incident where a parent reached out to me asking for a meeting, and I just decided to ask all the players in the space to come together for the meeting. So I had Happy Haven, I had school for the deaf. There I had those from the TVET Center present. I had some parents, curriculum officers, and so on present. And when I heard parents talk about the difficulty, many of them actually started crying in the room. because you have this child that is extra special. I don't want to say abnormal. Extra special that requires special attention. It's already costing you more to take care of that child. One pair of hearing aid is probably 5,000 on the cheap end. And that's on the cheap end. There are more high-tech ones that cost more than that, 5,000 on the cheap end. You go to ask for a grant, and some social worker will say to you, so where did daddy there?
Right.
You know, in the most crass manner, and then you feel let down because you feel like you have done something wrong because God alone knows that he probably absconded and gone away, no fault of yours. So you have all of that trauma trying to treat with. The child have to get to school. Recently I met with a parent in Palatavie, and they have to take, mommy not working, daddy not working, but they have to catch transport every morning, come to Scarborough, get the child on the bus that takes them up to Happy Haven, come back to town in the afternoon, pick up the child, and then go back to Palatavie because there's no route transport from north or from east coming to the center. And immediately I said, look, get two maxi and hire them, let two of the maxis from the school route be moved across to there and hire them. If you think the numbers aren't enough, I said, even if it's 3 children alone it have, and they are alone in the small maxi, hire the small maxi to do the work. Because the output for a special needs child must be more than we do for the other children. Because they need that extra special attention. I've been to universities with people who are dyslexic. But they have gotten there, and sadly none of those I've been to university with were Tobagonians. I'm not saying that they aren't Tobagonians who were dyslexic or are dyslexic that have made it all the way. Some have. But I'm saying we could have quite a larger success rate with people with these inabilities making it all the way. But it really depends on all of us in this space being able to do that and to get that done well enough. So I really thank you for raising that and raising it so openly and honestly. And I can say it as head of the executive, the decision is that we have to hire the people. If you have those contact information.
If they're home, persons are home, qualified, trained in Trinidad here, sit down. And also, I just want to say this, we have parents who had to leave their job because they have to see about these children, right? So they don't have an income. So of course, yes, they want the grant. But is it something that the THA can do, or, you know, persons who are in the know can do in terms of hiring these parents too? Because say on the bus, you must have a bus attendant because the driver cannot drive and take care of the autistic child that trying to go through the window. Right? What about the persons in terms of you have persons who are incontinent in terms of changing, and you have one nurse, right? Our nurse went home. She went home about 2 years ago, and there's one, and you have that one nurse to feed, to change diapers, to take whoever to the toilet. So you know, you're like if you have many hands but you only have 2. So all these things, is it that if you want to involve parents, could it be that we look at these parents who are already caregivers 24/7 because they would know what to do? And a parent with special needs, they often have 7 to 9 roles. A normal parent may have 2 or 3, right? So you're a mommy, you have a job, you're a spouse, whatever, but a parent with a child with special needs, you have at least 9 roles because you are also a therapist, you are a caregiver, you are a doctor, you are everything. So these parents can be, you know, integrated into the system, and you do some training with them, you give them some incentive, whether it's a certificate, because, you know, sometimes these parents are at home and they don't feel any worth. Because you're fighting up with this child 24 hours a day. So utilize your parent resource, because we may say, who is going to do it? But these parents are trained. They would have been trained over the years in their homes.
Right now, we have a parent at Palatavie Anglican Primary. So we have twin girls there who have special needs. Someone has to take them to the bathroom and all of that. And a parent, the aunt, dedicated, doing the work, and has never been remunerated for doing it. And I said to the secretary, I said, oh, let's find out where I pay the woman. Pay she some back pay too. Because, I mean, she's at the school every single day doing the work.
And she would help others as well.
And she would help others that might come in there. So you already have a aid right there, a resource there. And you raise a point that I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. The parents already have
The skills,
experiential
they have the
knowledge
skill set
and the
and
skill
the
set.
competencies.
And so we might as well hire them to do
Hire
the
them.
teaching aid work, the student aid work,
The
and so on.
student aid in terms of even the changing or the feeding, because they have this, I mean, you will say skill sets is what everybody would learn. But in terms of competencies, they would have been doing it and they can now transfer that to the other teachers, because sometimes, I'm telling you, working in the system, sometimes the teachers are afraid of the child with autism, and because they see them running and you running too, because you don't know what they're going to do, right? Because you're not, you're not aware of what's going to happen. So the continuous, professional development will make you know, hey, he just want to say hi, and that's just his way. So everybody run. I saw it. They came down to the school for the deaf, and the students ran and everybody take off, and it's like they were afraid. Wow. Because they are not in the know, but that is where the sensitization and the awareness comes in. So we all need to be trained from the head, come down, school supervisor, everybody. So you come in, and we have some training, and it costs what? Maybe $15,000 to do a workshop for 50 participants with refreshments, materials, and everything. Because and your facilitators and stuff, and you do it, and then you have because we did it already, right? We did it for free. We didn't do it at a cost, but you put a cost so you would know what to do, right? But these are things that would have been done. In terms of helping.
And as a THA policy, one of the things I also want us to do is the hiring of special needs people. Not enough special needs individuals are at the table. I think our division of Agri might have someone there, and a special needs individual may not be able to work this full 5 days a week. They may not be able to come for 8. You could stagger their time. But they could do simple tasks. They could be the ones running some of our help desks. They could do some of our BOA work, as in carrying the files, sourcing the files, and so on. Messengers. We could have them do some of those tasks for us in the system. So we need to hire some of them. And where we have persons who could go all the way up to advisor roles, where possible, why not? So we need to create a whole of THA policy to allow that in every single division they must have a quota of them employed within the space. That will assist us.
But what is lacking is that, and I can say this because through the Down Syndrome Family Network, the Office of the Prime Minister hire persons with Down syndrome and other disabilities for internship, and we were trying to bring it to Tobago, and we actually had meetings set up, but there were no candidates. I think there was one. Why? Because what happens is that when we get them, when they come to school to the deaf, or they come to the private schools, they would not have gone through the primary system or even the early childhood system. So in terms of just enough to socialize, it's not there, because you have them, they are home, they don't have the skill set to be able to work in the workplace then, right? So again, education in terms of parents knowing, hey, if I want my child to be included in the society, then I need to include them from the early childhood center. Then I need to have all these things happening. Then they must be able to go to the primary and go to secondary, and then they can go into the world of work. But you can't take them from home at 14, 15 and just put them in a workplace, right? It would not be fair for them. So all these are systems that need to be in place.
One person made a point I want us to raise before we close, which is the role of the private sector in education in Tobago. Our corporate Tobago, whatever that looks like, because it's not large, right? We have to admit that our private sector is not large. But the little we have to contribute a little more to the outcomes we want. And let me say now, when we start that school for the special needs in Signal Hill, and the facility we're looking at building is one that will take them from pre all the way up post-secondary school. So they could even work there afterwards, get the skills training, they could make things with their hands and sell and so on, have recreational spaces and so on for them. We are looking to you in the private sector to contribute. So when we get started and we say, come and bring your bricks, come and help us buy some equipment, come and contribute. Private sector, we are looking for you to contribute as well. It can't be just the THA's responsibility. You in the private sector also have a responsibility to give back. And you don't need to worry. You could write it off on your taxes when you're doing your tax returns. But you need to contribute to this effort. It has to be a whole of Tobago approach to fixing this issue. And beyond special needs, even in our schools, I go to Scarborough RC. They have a staff room, never used, because never furnished, empty, just as it is the day it was built. And I'm saying, so we have no courts on the island, no standards, no American stores. Nobody can bring two little sofa set and set up a lounge. Nobody could bring a coffee maker. Nobody could bring two kettles. Nobody could donate a stove. Nobody could donate a bed for the sick bay. Yes. It's simple. It is simple things that count. And the private sector have to get involved in these things. And schools, I know sometimes you ask and you get no, or they may give you a $200 and wish the best for you, but private sector, if you're looking on tonight, you have to get involved. Our school need things, and you can contribute as well.
Yes, you're quite right. That public-private sector partnership is critical, even for TVET. Yes. And when you're speaking about the whole apprenticeship programs and persons who do TVET programs having to transition into the world of work, we need that assistance from the private sector to take on some of these students to give them that work experience. So it's really critical, as you would have mentioned, having that private-public sector partnership. Yes,
and sometimes some of them, they are just waiting, you know. Sometimes we don't approach them. We quick to say that they're cheap, they don't give anything, but we don't approach them. Because I had the experience of going to my school, Bethesda, and the sick bay was just a room of rubble. And when we, the previous regime, we had a meeting with our good secretary, and she said, we don't have anything to give you all. That was in the height of COVID. Returning to school, sick bay was mandatory. And I'm opening this room and all I'm seeing is rubble. And I say, I have to do this. What did I do? I went out to my business people friends and I said, come on, my school need a bed. I got 2 beds, I got pillows, I got fan, I got a rug. When you go into my sick bay, you think you're at home. Because I believe that schools must also have a standard. Don't tell me because it's a school, you're giving me something cheap and rickety. Let us treat our schools like our homes. That's my philosophy. So I came and my sick bay, and when OSHA came back, they said, I tell you all, this lady don't want anything. Look, she's sick bay, because I went a begging. So the private sector is willing. Sometimes we don't approach them. Let's approach them.
And involve them.
Chief,
that's right.
One thing, and it will not be flushed up, but I want us to also look at promoting volunteerism. Because when we look at our schools and we look at some of the social challenges facing our children that are causing them to act out, we're seeing a lot of mental health issues, we're seeing poor coping skills. And when we look at some of them, it's, you know, we look at the homes, the makeup, we talked about male figures that may not be present, good, strong, positive male figures. We're seeing a lot more gangs, and in my neighborhood, you see them on the street, on the side, just hanging out, and you know who are the drug dealers in your neighborhood, and all that stuff. So we need people who have strong moral character, or just have the determination to, you know, let's volunteer, let's give back, tied into teaching about our culture, so we can develop a pride in our island, and we be willing to give and invest back into our island, and our island includes our children. Ms. Seconds made a statement about identity. When you don't know yourself, you're falling for everything. And when you look at our society now, we're absorbing every culture. We're absorbing every culture, every fad, you know, you have shared rooms in our secondary schools and all that stuff. Let's develop a sense of pride in who we are and what we have, and let us develop that sense that we want to protect what we have, and we want to invest in what we have. And that is why one of the reasons I came back home is family. But I always, when I grew up in school, I had a sense of our culture, the songs, the games we used to play. All of that was taught to me in school. The language, the patois, all of that was taught to me in school. And so it gave me a very positive feeling about my island. And so therefore, let us promote that volunteerism. People will be willing to give and invest. And the theater don't have to spend on everything. You guys don't have to pay for everything. You don't have to fund everything, right? We can give, just as how those businesses give, we can give up our time. We don't have to sit down and wait like Miss Shirley there went and get cheating them.
Yes.
You know, sorry, I don't put that in proper English, but you know.
Yes.
But we have to buy, it's our thing.
Yes.
It's we own.
That's right.
Right? And so let's not wait on others to protect. If we value it, we're going to protect it. We're going to preserve it. We're going to, we are going to, promote it. And so I think that, in regards to that, and our children are our biggest asset.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Our biggest asset. So you see that special needs thing, sir? September morning.
Yes, we're looking for those deliverables.
September morning,
so 2
yes.
hours and 33 minutes. So I have had you a very long, and those of you who have been online, you have stayed the course and a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
We had quite a productive talk about education, and I look forward to the things we'll be able to project in the upcoming budget for education.
Yeah.
But the budget is more than just a money policy statement. It's
Right.
really about a whole of government statement, how we plan to govern in the next fiscal year.
Right.
So I want to thank you, Tobago, thank you all. Guests, we come from teachers, educators, all, come from all over. And we have to, Belgarden still live, Cornwall?
Oh, Lord.
Somewhere around the corner.
Your tongue going now. Move down. Don't worry. I moved down to around the corner too. So thank you all very much, and God's blessings on all of you. Have a good night.
Yes.